Welcome to Soft Hour Library. Tonight's story begins now. Close your eyes and rest.
On each soft side, coincident with the parted swell, that but once leaving him, then flowed so wide away, on each bright side, the whale shed off enticings. No wonder there had been some among the hunters who, namelessly transporting and allured by all this serenity, had ventured to assail it, but had fatally found that quietude but the vesture of tornadoes. Yet calm, enticing calm, O whale, thou glidest on, to all who for the first time eye thee, no matter how many in that same way thou mayst he have bejuggled and destroyed before. And thus, through the serene tranquillities of the tropical sea, among waves whose hand-clappings were suspended by exceeding rapture, Moby-Dick moved on, still withholding from sight the full terrors of his submerged trunk, entirely hiding the wrenched hideousness of his jaw. But soon the forepart of him slowly rose from the water. For an instant, his whole marbleized body formed a high arch, like Virginia's natural bridge, and warningly waving his bannered flukes in the air, the grand god revealed himself, sounded, and went out of sight. Hoveringly halting and dipping on the wing, the white seafowls longingly lingered over the agitated pool that he left. With oars apeak and paddles down, the sheets of their sails adrift, the three boats now stilly floated, awaiting Moby-Dick's reappearance. "An hour," said Ahab, standing rooted in his boat's stern, and he gazed beyond the whale's place, towards the dim blue spaces and wide wooing vacancies to leeward. It was only an instant, for again his eyes seemed whirling round in his head as he swept the watery circle. The breeze now freshened, the sea began to swell. the birds," cried Tashtigo. In long Indian file, as when herons take wing, the white birds were now all flying towards Ahab's boat, and when within a few yards began fluttering over the water there, wheeling round and round, with joyous, expectant cries. Their vision was keener than man's. Ahab could discover no sign in the sea. But suddenly, as he peered down and down into its depths, he profoundly saw a white living spot no bigger than a white weasel, with wonderful celerity uprising and magnifying as it rose till it turned, and then there were plainly revealed two long crooked rows of white, glistening teeth, floating up from the undiscoverable bottom. It was Moby-Dick's open mouth and scrolled jaw, his vast, shadowed bulk still half blending with the blue of the sea. The glittering mouth yawned beneath the boat like an open-doored marble tomb, and giving one sidelong sweep with his steering oar, Ahab whirled the craft aside from this tremendous apparition. Then, calling upon Fedallah to change places with him, went forward to the bows, and seizing Perth's harpoon, commanded his crew to grasp their oars and stand by to stern. Now, by reason of this timely spinning round the boat upon its axis, its bow, by anticipation, was made to face the whale's head while yet under water. But as if perceiving this stratagem, Moby-Dick, with that malicious intelligence ascribed to him, sidlingly transplanted himself, as it were, in an instant, shooting his pleated head lengthwise beneath the boat. Through and through every plank and each rib, it thrilled for an instant, the whale obliquely lying on his back, in the manner of a biting shark, slowly and feelingly taking its bows full within his mouth, so that the long, narrow, scrolled lower jaw curled high up into the open air, and one of the teeth caught in a rowlock. The bluish pearl white of the inside of the jaw was within 6 inches of Ahab's head, and reached higher than that. In this attitude, the white whale now shook the slight cedar as a mildly cruel cat her mouse. With unastonished eyes, Fedallah gazed and crossed his arms, but the tiger-yellow crew were tumbling over each other's heads to gain the uttermost stern. And now, while both elastic gunnels were springing in and out, as the whale dallied with the doomed craft in this devilish way, and from his body being submerged beneath the boat, he could not be darted at from the bows, for the bows were almost inside of him, as it were. And while the other boats involuntarily paused, as before a quick crisis impossible to withstand, then it was that monomaniac Ahab, furious with this tantalizing vicinity of his foe, which placed him all alive and helpless in the very jaws he hated. Frenzied with all this, he seized the long bone with his naked hands and wildly strove to wrench it from its gripe. As now he thus vainly strove, the jaw slipped from him. The frail gunnels bent in, collapsed, and snapped, as both jaws, like an enormous shears, sliding further aft, bit the craft completely in twain, and locked themselves fast again in the sea, midway between the two floating wrecks. These floated aside, the broken ends drooping, the crew at the stern wreck clinging to the gunnels, and striving to hold fast to the oars to lash them across. At that preluding moment, ere the boat was yet snapped, Ahab, the first to perceive the whale's intent, by the crafty upraising of his head, a movement that loosed his hold for the time. At that moment, his hand had made one final effort to push the boat out of the bite. But only slipping further into the whale's mouth, and tilting over sideways as it slipped, the boat had shaken off his hold on the jaw, spilled him out of it as he leaned to the push, and so he fell flat-faced upon the sea. Ripplingly withdrawing from his prey, Moby-Dick now lay at a little distance, vertically thrusting his oblong white head up and down in the billows, and at the same time slowly revolving his whole spindled body, so that when his vast wrinkled forehead rose, some 20 or more feet out of the water, the now rising swells, with all their confluent waves, dazzlingly broke against it, vindictively tossing their shivered spray still higher into the air. So in a gale, the but half-baffled channel billows only recoil from the base of the Eddystone, triumphantly to overleap its summit with their scud. This motion is peculiar to the sperm whale. It receives its designation, pitchbulling, from its being likened to that preliminary up and down poise of the whale lance, in the exercise called pitchbulling previously described. By this motion, the whale must best and most comprehensively view whatever objects may be encircling him. But soon resuming his horizontal attitude, Moby-Dick swam swiftly round and round the wrecked crew, sideways churning the water in his vengeful wake, as if lashing himself up to still another and more deadly assault. The sight of the splintered boat seemed to madden him, as the blood of grapes and mulberries cast before Antiochus's elephants in the book of Maccabees. Meanwhile Ahab, half smothered in the foam of the whale's insolent tail and too much of a cripple to swim, though he could still keep afloat, even in the heart of such a whirlpool as that, helpless Ahab's head was seen, like a tossed bubble which the least chance shock might burst. From the boat's fragmentary stern, Fedallah incuriously and mildly eyed him. The clinging crew, at the other drifting end, could not succor him. More than enough was it for them to look to themselves. For so revolvingly appalling was the white whale's aspect, and so planetarily swift the ever-contracting circles he made, that he seemed horizontally swooping upon them. And though the other boats, unharmed, still hovered hard by, still they dared not pull into the eddy to strike, lest that should be the signal for the instant destruction of the jeopardized castaways, Ahab and all, nor in that case could they themselves hope to escape. With straining eyes, then, they remained on the outer edge of the direful zone, whose center had now become the old man's head. Meantime, from the beginning, all this had been descried from the ship's mastheads, and squaring her yards, she had borne down upon the scene, and was now so nigh that Ahab in the water hailed her, sail on the... But that moment, a breaking sea dashed on him from Moby-Dick, and whelmed him for the time. But struggling out of it again, and chancing to rise on a towering crest, he shouted, "Sail on the whale, drive him off." The Pequod's prows were pointed, and breaking up the charmed circle, she effectually parted the white whale from his victim. As he sullenly swam off, the boats flew to the rescue. Dragged into Stubbs' boat with bloodshot, blinded eyes, the white brine caking in his wrinkles, the long tension of Ahab's bodily strength did crack, and helplessly he yielded to his body's doom, for a time lying all crushed in the bottom of Stubbs' boat, like one trodden underfoot of herds of elephants. Far inland, nameless wails came from him, as desolate sounds from out ravines. But this intensity of his physical prostration did but so much the more abbreviate it. In an instant's compass, great hearts sometimes condense to one deep pang, the sum total of those shallow pains kindly diffused through feebler men's whole lives. And so such hearts, though summary in each one suffering, still, if the gods decree it, in their lifetime aggregate a whole age of woe, wholly made up of instantaneous intensities, for even in their pointless centers, those noble natures contain the entire circumferences of inferior souls. "The harpoon," said Ahab, halfway rising and draggingly leaning on one bended arm, "is it safe?" "Aye, sir, for it was not darted. This is it," said Stubb, showing it. "Lay it before me. Any missing men?" 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 oars, sir, and here are 5 men." That's good. "Help me, man. I wish to stand." So I see him, there, going to leeward still. What a leaping spout. Hands off from me. The eternal sap runs up in Ahab's bones again. Set the sail, out oars, the helm. It is often the case that when a boat is stove, its crew, being picked up by another boat, help to work that second boat, and the chase is thus continued with what is called double-banked oars. It was thus now. But the added power of the boat did not equal the added power of the whale, for he seemed to have treble-banked his every fin, swimming with a velocity which plainly showed that if now, under these circumstances, pushed on, the chase would prove an indefinitely prolonged, if not a hopeless one, nor could any crew endure for so long a period such an unintermitted, intense straining at the oar, a thing barely tolerable only in some one brief vicissitude. The ship itself, then, as it sometimes happens, offered the most promising intermediate means of overtaking the chase. Accordingly, the boats now made for her, and were soon swayed up to their cranes, the 2 parts of the wrecked boat having been previously secured by her, and then hoisting everything to her side, and stacking her canvas high up, and sideways outstretching it with stunned sails, like the double-jointed wings of an albatross, the Pequod bore down in the leeward wake of Moby-Dick. At the well-known methodic intervals, the whale's glittering spout was regularly announced from the manned mastheads, and when he would be reported as just gone down, Ahab would take the time, and then pacing the deck, binnacle watch in hand, so soon as the last second of the allotted hour expired, his voice was heard. "Whose is the doubloon now? D'ye see him?" And if the reply was "No, sir," straightway he commanded them to lift him to his perch. In this way the day wore on, Ahab now aloft and motionless, anon unrestingly pacing the planks. As he was thus walking, uttering no sound, except to hail the men aloft, or to bid them hoist a sail still higher, or to spread one to a still greater breadth, thus to and fro pacing, beneath his slouched hat, at every turn he passed his own wrecked boat, which had been dropped upon the quarterdeck and lay there reversed, broken bow to shattered stern. At last he paused before it, and as in an already overclouded sky fresh troops of clouds will sometimes sail across, so over the old man's face there now stole some such added gloom as this. Stubb saw him pause, and perhaps intending, not vainly, though to evince his own unabated fortitude, and thus keep up a valiant place in his captain's mind, he advanced, and eyeing the wreck exclaimed, "The thistle the ass refused. It pricked his mouth too keenly, sir, ha ha. What soulless thing is this that laughs before a wreck? Man, man, did I not know thee brave as fearless fire, and as mechanical, I could swear thou wert a poltroon. Groan nor laugh should be heard before a wreck." "Aye, sir," said Starbuck, drawing near, "'tis a solemn sight, an omen and an ill one." Omen, omen, the dictionary. If the gods think to speak outright to man, they will honorably speak outright, not shake their heads and give an old wives' darkling hint. Begone, ye two are the opposite poles of one thing. Starbuck is Stub reversed, and Stub is Starbuck, and ye two are all mankind. And Ahab stands alone among the millions of the peopled earth, nor gods nor men his neighbors. Cold, cold I shiver. How now, aloft there, d'ye see him? Sing out for every spout, though he spout 10 times a second. The day was nearly done. Only the hem of his golden robe was rustling. Soon it was almost dark, but the lookout men still remained unset. "Can't see the spout now, sir, too dark," cried a voice from the air. "How heading when last seen?" "As before, sir, straight to leeward." "Good, he will travel slower now, 'tis night. Down royals and topgallant stunsails, Mr. Starbuck. We must not run over him before morning. He's making a passage now, and may heave to a while. Helm there, keep her full before the wind. Aloft, come down, Mr. Stub, send a fresh hand to the foremast head, and see it manned till morning." Then advancing towards the doubloon in the mainmast, "Men, this gold is mine, for I earned it, but I shall let it abide here till the white whale is dead. And then, whosoever of ye first raises him, upon the day he shall be killed, this gold is that man, S. And if on that day I shall again raise him, then 10 times its sum shall be divided among all of ye. Away now, the deck is thine, sir." And so saying, he placed himself halfway within the scuttle, and slouching his hat, stood there till dawn, except when at intervals rousing himself to see how the night wore on. Chapter 134. The Chase, Second Day. At daybreak, the 3 mastheads were punctually manned afresh. "D'ye see him?" cried Ahab, after allowing a little space for the light to spread. "See nothing, sir." "Turn up all hands and make sail. He travels faster than I thought for the topgallant sails. Aye, they should have been kept on her all night. But no matter, 'tis but resting for the rush." Here be it said that this pertinacious pursuit of one particular whale, continued through day into night, and through night into day, is a thing by no means unprecedented in the South Sea fishery. For such is the wonderful skill, prescience of experience, and invincible confidence acquired by some great natural geniuses among the Nantucket commanders, that from the simple observation of a whale when last descried, they will, under certain given circumstances, pretty accurately foretell both the direction in which he will continue to swim for a time, while out of sight, as well as his probable rate of progression during that period. And in these cases, somewhat as a pilot, when about losing sight of a coast, whose general trending he well knows, and which he desires shortly to return to again, but at some further point, like as this pilot stands by his compass and takes the precise bearing of the cape at present visible, in order the more certainly to hit aright the remote, unseen headland eventually to be visited, so does the fisherman at his compass with the whale. For after being chased and diligently marked through several hours of daylight, then, when night obscures the fish, the creature's future wake through the darkness is almost as established to the sagacious mind of the hunter as the pilot's coast is to him. So that to this hunter's wondrous skill, the proverbial evanescence of a thing writ in water, awake, is to all desired purposes well nigh as reliable as the steadfast land. And as the mighty iron leviathan of the modern railway is so familiarly known in its every pace, that with watches in their hands, men time his rate as doctors that of a baby's pulse, and lightly say of it, the up train or the down train will reach such or such a spot, at such or such an hour. Even so, almost, there are occasions when these Nantucketeers time that other leviathan of the deep, according to the observed humour of his speed, and say to themselves, so many hours hence this whale will have gone 200 miles, will have about reached this or that degree of latitude or longitude. But to render this acuteness at all successful in the end, the wind and the sea must be the whaleman's allies. For of what present avail to the becalmed or windbound mariner is the skill that assures him he is exactly 93 leagues and a quarter from his port. Inferable from these statements are many collateral subtle matters touching the chase of whales. The ship tore on, leaving such a furrow in the sea as when a cannonball nascent becomes a ploughshare and turns up the level field. By salt and hemp, cried Stubb, but this swift motion of the deck creeps up one's legs and tingles at the heart. This ship and I are two brave fellows. Ha ha, someone take me up and launch me spinewise on the sea, for by live oaks, my spine's a keel. Ha ha, we go the gate that leaves no dust behind. There she blows, she blows, she blows, right ahead, was now the masthead cry. Aye, aye, cried Stubb, I knew it, he can't escape, blow on and split your spout, O whale. The mad fiend himself is after ye, blow your trump, blister your lungs. Ahab will dam off your blood, as a miller shuts his watergate upon the stream. And Stubb did, but speak out for well nigh all that crew. The frenzies of the chase had by this time worked them bubblingly up, like old wine worked anew. Whatever pale fears and forebodings some of them might have felt before, these were not only now kept out of sight through the growing awe of Ahab, but they were broken up, and on all sides routed, as timid prairie hares that scatter before the bounding bison. The hand of fate had snatched all their souls, and by the stirring perils of the previous day, the rack of the past night's suspense, the fixed, unfearing, blind, reckless way in which their wild craft went plunging towards its flying mark, by all these things their hearts were bowled along. The wind that made great bellies of their sails and rushed the vessel on by arms invisible as irresistible, this seemed the symbol of that unseen agency which so enslaved them to the race. They were one man, not 30. For as the one ship that held them all, though it was put together of all contrasting things, oak and maple and pine wood, iron and pitch and hemp, yet all these ran into each other in the one concrete hull, which shot on its way, both balanced and directed by the long central keel. Even so, all the individualities of the crew, this man's valor, that man's fear. Guilt and guiltiness, all varieties were welded into oneness, and were all directed to that fatal goal which Ahab, their one lord and keel, did point to. The rigging lived. The mastheads, like the tops of tall palms, were outspreadingly tufted with arms and legs. Clinging to a spar with one hand, some reached forth the other with impatient wavings. Others, shading their eyes from the vivid sunlight, sat far out on the rocking yards, all the spars in full bearing of mortals, ready and ripe for their fate. Ah, how they still strove through that infinite blueness to seek out the thing that might destroy them. Why sing ye not out for him, if ye see him? Cried Ahab, when, after the lapse of some minutes since the first cry, no more had been heard. Sway me up, men, ye have been deceived. Not Moby-Dick casts one odd jet that way, and then disappears. It was even so, in their headlong eagerness, the men had mistaken some other thing for the whale spout, as the event itself soon proved, for hardly had Ahab reached his perch, Hardly was the rope belayed to its pin on deck when he struck the keynote to an orchestra that made the air vibrate as with the combined discharges of rifles. The triumphant halloo of 30 buckskin lungs was heard, as much nearer to the ship than the place of the imaginary jet, less than a mile ahead, Moby-Dick bodily burst into view, for not by any calm and indolent spoutings, not by the peaceable gush of that mystic fountain in his head, did the white whale now reveal his vicinity, but by the far more wondrous phenomenon of breaching. Rising with his utmost velocity from the furthest depths, the sperm whale thus booms his entire bulk into the pure element of air, and piling up a mountain of dazzling foam, shows his place to the distance of 7 miles and more. In those moments, the torn, enraged waves he shakes off seem his mane. In some cases, this breaching is his act of defiance. "There she breaches, there she breaches," was the cry, as in his immeasurable bravadoes the white whale tossed himself salmon-like to heaven. So suddenly seen in the blue plain of the sea, and relieved against the still bluer margin of the sky, the spray that he raised, for the moment, intolerably glittered and glared like a glacier, and stood there gradually fading and fading away from its first sparkling intensity to the dim mistiness of an advancing shower in a veil. "I breach your last to the sun, Moby-Dick," cried Ahab. "Thy hour and thy harpoon are at hand. Down, down all of ye, but one man at the fore." The boats stand by. Unmindful of the tedious rope ladders of the shrouds, the men, like shooting stars, slid to the deck by the isolated backstays and halyards, while Ahab, less dartingly, but still rapidly, was dropped from his perch. "Lower away," he cried, so soon as he had reached his boat, a spare one, rigged the afternoon previous. "Misto! Starbuck, the ship is thine. Keep away from the boats, but keep near them. Lower oars!" As if to strike a quick terror into them, by this time being the first assailant himself, Moby-Dick had turned, and was now coming for the 3 crews. Ahab's boat was central, and cheering his men, he told them he would take the whale head and head, that is, pull straight up to his forehead, a not uncommon thing, for when within a certain limit, such a course excludes the coming onset from the whale's sidelong vision. But ere that close limit was gained, and while yet all 3 boats were plain as the ship's 3 masts to his eye, the white whale churning himself into furious speed, almost in an instant as it were, rushing among the boats with open jaws and a lashing tail, offered appalling battle on every side, and heedless of the irons darted at him from every boat, seemed only intent on annihilating each separate plank of which those boats were made. But skillfully maneuvered, incessantly wheeling like trained chargers in the field, the boats for a while eluded him, though at times but by a plank's breadth, while all the time Ahab's unearthly slogan tore every other cry but his to shreds. But at last in his untraceable evolutions, the white whale so crossed and recrossed, and in 1,000 ways entangled the slack of the 3 lines now fast to him, that they foreshortened, and of themselves warped the devoted boats towards the planted irons in him, though now for a moment the whale drew aside a little, as if to rally for a more tremendous charge. Seizing that opportunity, Ahab first paid out more line, and then was rapidly hauling and jerking in upon it again, hoping that way to disencumber it of some snarls, when lo, a sight more savage than the embattled teeth of sharks. Caught and twisted, corkscrewed in the mazes of the line, loose harpoons and lances, with all their bristling barbs and points, came flashing and dripping up to the chocks in the bows of Ahab's boat. Only one thing could be done. Seizing the boat knife, he critically reached within through, and then without the rays of steel, dragged in the line beyond, past it, inboard to the bowsman, and then, twice sundering the rope near the chocks, dropped the intercepted faggot of steel into the sea, and was all fast again. That instant, the white whale made a sudden rush among the remaining tangles of the other lines. By so doing, irresistibly dragged the more involved boats of Stubb and Flask towards his flukes, dashed them together like two rolling husks on a surf-beaten beach, and then diving down into the sea, disappeared in a boiling maelstrom, in which for space the odorous cedar chips of the wrecks danced round and round, like the grated nutmeg in a swiftly stirred bowl of punch. While the two crews were yet circling in the waters, reaching out after the revolving line tubs, oars, and other floating furniture, while a sloped little Flask bobbed up and down like an empty vial, twitching his legs upwards to escape the dreaded jaws of sharks, and Stubb was lustily singing out for someone to ladle him up. And while the old man's line, now parting, admitted of his pulling into the creamy pool to rescue whom he could, in that wild simultaneousness of 1,000 concreted perils, Ahab's yet unstricken boat seemed drawn up towards heaven by invisible wires, as, arrow-like, shooting perpendicularly from the sea, the white whale dashed his broad forehead against its bottom, and sent it, turning over and over, into the air, till it fell again, gunwale downwards, and Ahab and his men struggled out from under it, like seals from a seaside cave. The first uprising momentum of the whale, modifying its direction as he struck the surface, involuntarily launched him along it, to a little distance from the center of the destruction he had made, and with his back to it, he now lay for a moment slowly feeling with his flukes from side to side, and whenever a stray oar, bit of plank, the least chip or crumb of the boats touched his skin, his tail swiftly drew back and came sideways, smiting the sea. But soon, as if satisfied that his work for that time was done, he pushed his pleated forehead through the ocean, and trailing after him the intertangled lines, continued his leeward way at a traveller's methodic pace. As before, the attentive ship, having descried the whole fight, again came bearing down to the rescue, and dropping a boat, picked up the floating mariners, tubs, oars, and whatever else could be caught at, and safely landed them on her decks. Some sprained shoulders, wrists, and ankles, livid contusions, wrenched harpoons and lances, inextricable intricacies of rope, shattered oars and planks, all these were there, but no fatal or even serious ill seemed to have befallen anyone. As with Fedallah the day before, so Ahab was now found grimly clinging to his boat's broken half, which afforded a comparatively easy float, nor did it so exhaust him as the previous day's mishap. But when he was helped to the deck, all eyes were fastened upon him, as instead of standing by himself, he still half hung upon the shoulder of Starbuck, who had thus far been the foremost to assist him. His ivory leg had been snapped off, leaving but one short, sharp splinter. Aye, Starbuck, tea's sweet to lean sometimes, be the leaner who he will, and would old Ahab had leaned oftener than he has. The ferule has not stood, sir, said the carpenter, now coming up. I put good work into that leg. But no bones broken, sir, I hope, said Stubb with true concern. Aye, and all splintered to pieces, Stubb, you see it. But even with a broken bone, old Ahab is untouched, and I account no living bone of mine one jot more me than this dead one that's lost. Nor white whale, nor man, nor fiend can so much as graze old Ahab in his own proper and inaccessible being. Can any lead touch yonder floor, any mast scrape yonder roof, aloft there, which way? Dead to leeward, sir. Up helm then, pile on the sail again, ship keepers, down the rest of the spare boats and rig them, mister. Starbuck away, and muster the boat's crews. Let me first help thee towards the bulwarks, sir. Oh, how this splinter gores me now, accursed fate, that the unconquerable captain in the soul should have such a craven mate. So, my body, man, not thee. Give me something for a cane, there, that shivered lance will do. Muster the men, Surely I have not seen him yet. By heaven it cannot be, missing, quick call them all. But the old man's hinted thought was true. Upon mustering the company, the Parsee was not there. The Parsee, cried Stubb, he must have been caught in. The black vomit wrench thee. Run all of ye above a low cabin forecastle, find him, not gone, not gone. But quickly they returned to him, with the tidings that the Parsee was nowhere to be found. "Aye, sir," said Stubb, "caught among the tangles of your line. I thought I saw him dragging under. But my line, gone, gone. What means that little word? What death knell rings in it? That old Ahab shakes as if he were the belfry. The harpoon, too, toss over the litter there, d'ye see it? The forged iron men, the white whales, no, blistered fool. This hand did dart it, 'tis in the fish. Aloft there, keep him nailed quick. All hands to the rigging of the boats, collect the oars, harpooneers, the irons, hoist the royals higher, a pull on all the sheets. Helm there, steady, steady for your life. I'll 10 times girdle the unmeasured globe, yea, and dive straight through it, but I'll slay him yet." "Great God, but for one single instant show thyself," cried Starbuck. "Never, never wilt thou capture him, old man, in Jesus' name, no more of this. That's worse than devil's madness. 2 days chased, twice stove to splinters, thy very leg once more snatched from under thee, thy evil shadow gone, all good angels mobbing thee with warnings. What more wouldst thou have? Shall we keep chasing this murderous fish till he swamps the last man? Shall we be dragged by him to the bottom of the sea? Shall we be towed by him to the infernal world? Oh, impiety and blasphemy to hunt him more. Starbuck, of late I've felt strangely moved to thee. Ever since that hour we both saw, thou know'st he what, in one another's eyes. But in this matter of the whale, be the front of thy face to me as the palm of this hand, a lipless, unfeatured blank. Ahab is forever Ahab, man. This whole act's immutably decreed. 'Twas rehearsed by thee and me 1,000,000,000 years before this ocean rolled. Fool, I am the fates' lieutenant, I act under orders. Look thou, underling, that thou obeyest mine. Stand round me, men. Ye see an old man cut down to the stump, leaning on a shivered lance, propped up on a lonely foot. 'Tis Ahab, his body's part, but Ahab's soul's a centipede that moves upon 100 legs. I feel strained, half-stranded, as ropes that tow dismasted frigates in a gale, and I may look so. But ere I break, ye'll hear me crack. Until ye hear that, know that Ahab's hawser tows his purpose yet. Believe ye, men, in the things called omens, then laugh aloud and cry encore, for ere they drown, drowning things will twice rise to the surface, then rise again to sink for evermore. So with Moby-Dick, 2 days he's floated, tomorrow will be the 3rd. Aye, men, he'll rise once more, but only to spout his last. Ye feel brave, men, brave. As feel as fire, cried Stubby. And as mechanical, muttered Ahab. Then as the men went forward, he muttered on, the things called omens, and yesterday I talked the same to Starbuck there, concerning my broken boat. Oh, how valiantly I seek to drive out of others' hearts what's clinched so fast in mine. The Parsee, gone, and he was to go before, but still was to be seen again ere I could perish. How's that? There's a riddle now might baffle all the lawyers backed by the ghosts of the whole line of judges. Like a hawk's beak it pecks my brain. I'll solve it though. When dusk descended, the whale was still in sight to leeward. So once more the sail was shortened, and everything passed nearly as on the previous night. Only the sound of hammers and the hum of the grindstone was heard till nearly daylight, as the men toiled by lanterns in the complete and careful rigging of the spare boats, and sharpening their fresh weapons for the morrow. Meantime, of the broken keel of Ahab's wrecked craft, the carpenter made him another leg. while still as on the night before, slouched Ahab stood fixed within his scuttle, his hid, heliotrope glance anticipatingly gone backward on its dial, sat due eastward for the earliest sun. Chapter 135. The Chase. Third day. The morning of the third day dawned fair and fresh, and once more the solitary nightman at the foremast head was relieved by crowds of the daylight lookouts, who dotted every mast and almost every spar. "D'ye see him?" cried Ahab, but the whale was not yet in sight. "In his infallible wake, though, but follow that wake, that's all. Helm there steady as thou goest, and hast been going." What a lovely day again, were it a new-made world, and made for a summer house to the angels, and this morning the first of its throwing open to them, a fairer day could not dawn upon that world. Here's food for thought, had Ahab time to think, but Ahab never thinks, he only feels, that's tingling enough for mortal man, to think's audacity. God only has that right and privilege. Thinking is, or ought to be, a coolness and a calmness, and our poor hearts throb, and our poor brains beat too much for that. And yet I've sometimes thought my brain was very calm, frozen calm, this old skull cracks so, like a glass in which the contents turn to ice, and shiver it. And still this hair is growing now, this moment growing, and heat must breed it. But no, it's like that sort of common grass that will grow anywhere, between the earthy clefts of Greenland ice or in Vesuvius lava. How the wild winds blow it! They whip it about me as the torn shreds of split sails lash the tossed ship they cling to. A vile wind that has no doubt blown ere this through prison corridors and cells and wards of hospitals and ventilated them, and now comes blowing hither as innocent as fleeces. Out upon it, it's tainted. Were I the wind, I'd blow no more on such a wicked, miserable world. I'd crawl somewhere to a cave and slink there. And yet 'tis a noble and heroic thing, the wind, whoever conquered it, in every fight it has the last and bitterest blow. Run tilting at it, and you but run through it. Ha, a coward wind that strikes stark naked men, but will not stand to receive a single blow. Even Ahab is a braver thing, a nobler thing than that. Would now the wind but had a body, but all the things that most exasperate and outrage mortal man, all these things are bodiless, but only bodiless as objects, not as agents. There's a most special, a most cunning, oh, a most malicious difference. And yet I say again, and swear it now, that there's something all glorious and gracious in the wind. These warm trade winds, at least, that in the clear heavens blow straight on, in strong and steadfast, vigorous mildness, and veer not from their mark, however the baser currents of the sea may turn and tack, and mightiest Mississippis of the land swift and swerve about, uncertain where to go at last. And by the eternal poles, these same trades that so directly blow my good ship on, these trades, or something like them, something so unchangeable and full as strong, blow my keeled soul along. To it, aloft there, what d'ye see? Nothing, sir. Nothing, and noon at hand. The doubloon goes a-begging, see the sun. Aye, aye, it must be so. I've oversailed him. How got the start? Aye, he's chasing me now, not I him, that's bad, I might have known it too. Fool, the lines, the harpoons he's towing. Aye, aye, I have run him by last night. About, come down all of ye, but the regular lookouts, man the braces. Steering as she had done, the wind had been somewhat on the Pequod's quarter, so that now being pointed in the reverse direction, the braced ship sailed hard upon the breeze as she returned the cream in her own white wake. Against the wind he now steers for the open jaw, murmured Starbuck to himself, as he coiled the new-hauled main brace upon the rail. God keep us, but already my bones feel damp within me, and from the inside wet my flesh. I misdoubt me that I disobey my God in obeying him. Stand by to sway me up, cried Ahab, advancing to the hempen basket. We should mate him soon. Aye, sir, and straightway Starbuck did Ahab's bidding, and once more Ahab swung on high. A whole hour now passed, gold beaten out to ages. Time itself now held long breaths with keen suspense. But at last, some 3 points off the weather bow, Ahab descried the spout again, and instantly from the 3 mastheads 3 shrieks went up, as if the tongues of fire had voiced it. Forward to forward I meet thee this 3rd time, Moby-Dick. On deck there, brace sharper up, crowd her into the wind's eye. He's too far off to lower yet, mister. Starboard. The sails shake, stand over that helmsman with a topmaul, so, he travels fast, and I must down. But let me have one more good round look aloft here at the sea. There's time for that. An old sight, and yet somehow so young, and not changed a wink since I first saw it, a boy from the sandhills of Nantucket. The same to Noah as to me. There's a soft shower to leeward. Such lovely leewardings, they must lead somewhere to something else than common land, more palmy than the palms. Leeward the white whale goes that way, look to windward then, the better if the bitter a quarter. But goodbye, old masthead, what's this? Green, tiny mosses in these warped cracks. No such green weather stains on Ahab's head. There's the difference now between man's old age and matter, S. But old mast, we both grow old together. Sound in our hulls, though are we not my ship? Minus a leg, that's all. By heaven, this dead wood has the better of my live flesh every way. I can't compare with it, and I've known some ships made of dead trees outlast the lives of men, made of the most vital stuff of vital fathers. What's that he said? He should still go before me, my pilot, and yet to be seen again, but where? Will I have eyes at the bottom of the sea, supposing I descend those endless stairs, and all night I've been sailing from him, wherever he did sink to. Like many more thou toldst ye direful truth, as touching thyself, O Parsi, but Ahab, there thy shot fell short. Goodbye, masthead, keep a good eye upon the whale, the while I'm gone. We'll talk tomorrow, nay, tonight, when the white whale lies down there, tied by head and tail. He gave the word, and still gazing round him, was steadily lowered through the cloven blue air to the deck. In due time the boats were lowered, but as standing in his shallop's stern, Ahab just hovered upon the point of the descent, he waved to the mate, who held one of the tackle ropes on deck, and bade him pause. Starbuck. So, for the 3rd time, my soul's ship starts upon this voyage, Starbuck. Aye, sir, thou wilt have it so. Some ships sail from their ports, and ever afterwards are missing, Starbuck. Truth, sir, saddest truth. Some men die at ebb tide, some at low water, some at the full of the flood, and I feel now like a billow that's all one crested comb, Starbuck. I am old, shake hands with me, man. Their hands met, their eyes fastened, Starbuck's tears the glue. Oh, my captain, noble heart, go not, go not. See, it's a brave man that weeps, how great the agony of the persuasion then. Lower away, cried Ahab, tossing the mate's arm from him. Stand by the crew. In an instant, the boat was pulling round close under the stern. The sharks, cried a voice from the low cabin window there. Oh, master, my master, come back. But Ahab heard nothing, for his own voice was high lifted then, and the boat leaped on. Yet the voice spake true, for scarce had he pushed from the ship, when numbers of sharks, seemingly rising from out the dark waters beneath the hull, maliciously snapped at the blades of the oars every time they dipped in the water, and in this way accompanied the boat with their bites. It is a thing not uncommonly happening to the whaleboats in those swarming seas, the sharks at times apparently following them in the same prescient way that vultures hover over the banners of marching regiments in the east. But these were the first sharks that had been observed by the Pequod since the white whale had been first descried, and whether it was that Ahab's crew were all such tiger-yellow barbarians, and therefore their flesh more musky to the senses of the sharks, a matter sometimes well known to affect them. However it was, they seemed to follow that one boat without molesting the others. "Heart of wrought steel," murmured Starbuck, gazing over the side, and following with his eyes the receding boat, "canst thou yet ring boldly to that sight, lowering thy keel among ravening sharks, and followed by them, open-mouthed to the chase, and this the critical third day, for when 3 days flow together in one continuous intense pursuit, be sure the first is the morning, the second the noon, and the third the evening, and the end of that thing, be that end what it may. O my God, what is this that shoots through me, and leaves me so deadly calm, yet expectant, fixed at the top of a shudder? Future things swim before me, as in empty outlines and skeletons, all the past is somehow grown dim. Mary girl, thou fadest in pale glories behind me, boy, I seem to see but thy eyes grown wondrous blue. Strangest problems of life seem clearing, but clouds sweep between. Is my journey's end coming? My legs feel faint, like his who has footed it all day. Feel thy heart beats it yet, stir thyself, Starbuck, stave it off, move, speak aloud. Masthead there, see my boy's hand on the hill, crazed, aloft there, keep thy keenest eye upon the boats, mark well the whale, ho again, drive off that hawk, see he pecks, he tears the vane, pointing to the red flag flying at the main truck. Ha, he soars away with it. Where is the old man now? Seest thou that sight, O Ahab? Shudder, shudder. The boats had not gone very far, when by a signal from the mastheads, a downward pointed arm, Ahab knew that the whale had sounded, but intending to be near him at the next rising, he held on his way a little sideways from the vessel, the becharmed crew maintaining the profoundest silence as the head-beat waves hammered and hammered against the opposing bow. Drive, drive in your nails, O ye waves, to their uttermost heads drive them in, ye but strike a thing without a lid, and no coffin and no hearse can be mine, and hemp only can kill me, ha, ha. Suddenly, the waters around them slowly swelled in broad circles, then quickly upheaved, as if sideways sliding from a submerged berg of ice, swiftly rising to the surface. A low rumbling sound was heard, a subterraneous hum, and then all held their breaths, as bedraggled with trailing ropes and harpoons and lances, a vast form shot lengthwise but obliquely from the sea. Shrouded in a thin, drooping veil of mist, it hovered for a moment in the rainbowed air, and then fell swamping back into the deep. Crushed 30 feet upwards, the waters flashed for an instant like heaps of fountains, then brokenly sank in a shower of flakes, leaving the circling surface creamed like new milk round the marble trunk of the whale. "Give way," cried Ahab to the oarsmen, and the boats darted forward to the attack. But maddened by yesterday's fresh irons that corroded in him, Moby-Dick seemed combinedly possessed by all the angels that fell from heaven. The wide tiers of welded tendons overspreading his broad white forehead beneath the transparent skin looked knitted together, as head-on he came churning his tail among the boats, and once more flailed them apart, spilling out the irons and lances from the two mates' boats, and dashing in one side of the upper part of their bows, but leaving Ahab's almost without a scuff. While Daggoo and Queequeg were stopping the strained planks, and as the whale swimming out from them turned and showed one entire flank as he shot by them again. At that moment, a quick cry went up. Lashed round and round to the fish's back, pinioned in the turns upon turns in which, During the past night, the whale had reeled the involutions of the lines around him. The half-torn body of the Parsee was seen, his sable raiment frayed to shreds, his distended eyes turned full upon old Ahab. The harpoon dropped from his hand. Befooled, drawing in a long, lean breath, I, Parsee, I see thee again. I and thou goest before, and this then is the hearse that thou didst promise. But I hold thee to the last letter of thy word. Where is the second hearse? Away, mates, to the ship. Those boats are useless now. Repair them if ye can in time, and return to me. If not, Ahab is enough to die down men. The first thing that but offers to jump from this boat I stand in, that thing I harpoon. Ye are not other men, but my arms and my legs, and so obey me. Where's the whale gone down again? But he looked too nigh the boat, for as if bent upon escaping with the corpse he bore, and as if the particular place of the last encounter had been but a stage in his leeward voyage, Moby-Dick was now again steadily swimming forward, and had almost passed the ship, which thus far had been sailing in the contrary direction to him, though for the present her headway had been stopped. He seemed swimming with his utmost velocity, and now only intent upon pursuing his own straight path in the sea. "O Ahab," cried Starbuck, "not too late is it, even now the third day, to desist. See, Moby-Dick seeks thee not. It is thou that madly seekest him." Setting sail to the rising wind, the lonely boat was swiftly impelled to leeward by both oars and canvas. And at last, when Ahab was sliding by the vessel, so near as plainly to distinguish Starbuck's face as he leaned over the rail, he hailed him to turn the vessel about and follow him, not too swiftly, at a judicious interval. Glancing upwards, he saw Tashtego, Queequeg, and Daggoo eagerly mounting to the three mastheads, while the oarsmen were rocking in the two-staved boats, which had but just been hoisted to the side, and were busily at work in repairing them. One after the other, through the portholes as he sped, he also caught flying glimpses of Stubb and Flask, busying themselves on deck among bundles of new irons and lances. As he saw all this, as he heard the hammers in the broken boats, far other hammers seemed driving a nail into his heart. But he rallied, and now marking that the vane or flag was gone from the main masthead, he shouted to Tashtego, who had just gained that perch, to descend again for another flag and a hammer and nails, and so nail it to the mast. Whether fagged by the 3 days' running chase and the resistance to his swimming in the knotted hamper he bore, or whether it was some latent deceitfulness and malice in him, whichever was true, the white whale's way now began to abate, as it seemed, from the boat so rapidly nearing him once more, though indeed the whale's last start had not been so long a one as before. And still as Ahab glided over the waves, the unpitying sharks accompanied him, and so pertinaciously stuck to the boat, and so continually bit at the plying oars, that the blades became jagged and crunched, and left small splinters in the sea at almost every dip. Heed them not, those teeth, but give new rollicks to your oars. Pull on, tease the better rest, the shark's jaw than the yielding water. But at every bite, sir, the thin blades grow smaller and smaller. They will last long enough, pull on, but who can tell, he muttered, whether these sharks swim to feast on the whale or on Ahab, but pull on, I all alive now we near him. The helm, take the helm, let me pass. And so saying, 2 of the oarsmen helped him forward to the bows of the still flying boat. At length, as the craft was cast to one side and ran ranging along with the white whale's flank, he seemed strangely oblivious of its advance, as the whale sometimes will, and Ahab was fairly within the smoky mountain mist, which, thrown off from the whale's spout, curled round his great monadnock hump. He was even thus close to him, when, with body arched back and both arms lengthwise high lifted to the poise, he darted his fierce iron, and his far fiercer curse into the hated whale. As both steel and curse sank to the socket, as if sucked into a morass, Moby-Dick sideways writhed, spasmodically rolled his knife flank against the bow, and without staving a hole in it, so suddenly canted the boat over that had it not been for the elevated part of the gunwale to which he then clung, Ahab would once more have been tossed into the sea. As it was, 3 of the oarsmen, who foreknew not the precise instant of the dart, and were therefore unprepared for its effects, these were flung out, but so fell that in an instant 2 of them clutched the gunwale again, and rising to its level on a combing wave, hurled themselves bodily inboard again, the 3rd man helplessly dropping astern, but still afloat and swimming. Almost simultaneously, with a mighty volition of ungraduated, instantaneous swiftness, the white whale darted through the weltering sea. But when Ahab cried out to the steersman to take new turns with the line, and hold it so, and commanded the crew to turn round on their seats and tow the boat up to the mark, the moment the treacherous line felt that double strain and tug, it snapped in the empty air. What breaks in me, some sinew cracks, 'tis whole again, oars, oars burst in upon him. Hearing the tremendous rush of the sea-crashing boat, the whale wheeled round to present his blank forehead at bay, but in that evolution, catching sight of the nearing black hull of the ship, seemingly seeing in it the source of all his persecutions, bethinking it may be, a larger and nobler foe, of a sudden he bore down upon its advancing prow, smiting his jaws amid fiery showers of foam. Ahab staggered, his hands smote his forehead. I grow blind, hands, stretch out before me that I may yet grope my way. Ist night. The whale, the ship, cried the cringing oarsmen. Oars, oars, slope downwards to thy depths, O sea, that ere it be forever too late, Ahab may slide this last time upon his mark. I see the ship, dash on, my men, will ye not save my ship? But as the oarsmen violently forced their boat through the sledge-hammering seas, the before whale-smitten bow ends of 2 planks burst through, and in an instant almost, the temporarily disabled boat lay nearly level with the waves, its half-wading, splashing crew trying hard to stop the gap and bail out the pouring water. Meantime, for that one beholding instant, Tashtego's masthead hammer remained suspended in his hand, and the red flag, half wrapping him as with a plaid, then streamed itself straight out from him as his own forward-flowing heart, while Starbuck and Stubb, standing upon the bowsprit beneath, caught sight of the down-coming monster just as soon as he. The whale, up helm, oh, all ye sweet powers of air, now hug me close. Let not Starbuck die, if die he must, in a woman's fainting fit. Up helm, I say, ye fools, the jaw. Is this the end of all my bursting prayers, all my lifelong fidelities? O Ahab, Ahab, lo thy work. Steady, helmsman, steady. Nay, up helm again, he turns to meet us. Oh, his unappeasable brow drives on towards one whose duty tells him he cannot depart. My God, stand by me now. Stand not by me, but stand under me, whoever you are that will now help Stubb, for Stubb too sticks here. I grin at thee, thou grinning whale, whoever helped Stubb or kept Stubb awake, but Stubb's own unwinking eye, and now poor Stubb goes to bed upon a mattress that is all too soft. Would it were stuffed with brushwood. I grin at thee, thou grinning whale. Look ye, sun, moon, and stars. I call ye assassins of as good a fellow as ever spouted up his ghost. For all that I would yet ring glasses with ye, would ye but hand the cup. Oh, thou grinning whale, but there'll be plenty of gulping soon. Why fly ye not, O Ahab? For me, off shoes and jacket to it. Let Stubb die in his drawers, a most mouldy and over-salted death, though. Cherries. O flask, for one red cherry ere we die. Cherries, I only wish that we were where they grow. O Stubb, I hope my poor mother's drawn my part pay ere this. If not, few coppers will now come to her, for the voyage is up. From the ship's bows, nearly all the seamen now hung inactive. Hammers, bits of plank, lances, and harpoons mechanically retained in their hands, just as they had darted from their various employments, all their enchanted eyes intent upon the whale, which from side to side, strangely vibrating his predestinating head, sent a broad band of overspreading semicircular foam before him as he rushed. Retribution, swift vengeance, eternal malice were in his whole aspect, and spite of all that mortal man could do, the solid white buttress of his forehead smote the ship's starboard bow, till men and timbers reeled. Some fell flat upon their faces. Like dislodged trucks, the heads of the harpooneers aloft shook on their bull-like necks. Through the breach, they heard the waters pour as mountain torrents down a flume. "The ship, the hearse, the second hearse," cried Ahab from the boat. "Its wood could only be American." Diving beneath the settling ship, the whale ran quivering along its keel, but turning under water, swiftly shot to the surface again, far off the other bow, but within a few yards of Ahab's boat, where for a time he lay quiescent. I turn my body from the sun. What ho, Tashtigo, let me hear thy hammer. O ye three unsurrendered spires of mine, thou uncracked keel, and only God-bullet hull, thou firm deck, and haughty helm and pole-pointed prow, death-glorious ship. Must ye then perish, and without me, am I cut off from the last fond pride of meanest shipwrecked captains? O lonely death on lonely life! O now I feel my topmost greatness lies in my topmost grief. Ho ho from all your furthest bounds, pour ye now in, ye bold billows of my whole foregone life, and top this one-piled coma of my death. Towards thee I roll, thou all-destroying but unconquering whale. To the last I grapple with thee, from hell's heart I stab at thee, for hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. Sink all coffins and all hearses to one common pool, and since neither can be mine, let me then tow to pieces, while still chasing thee, though tied to thee, thou damned whale. Thus I give up the spear. The harpoon was darted, the stricken whale flew forward. With igniting velocity, the line ran through the grooves, ran foul. Ahab stooped to clear it. He did clear it, but the flying turn caught him round the neck, and voicelessly as Turkish mutes bowstring their victim, he was shot out of the boat, ere the crew knew he was gone. Next instant, the heavy ice splice in the rope's final end flew out of the stark-empty tub, knocked down an oarsman, and smiting the sea, disappeared in its depths. For an instant, the tranced boat's crew stood still, then turned. The ship, great God, where is the ship? Soon they through dim, bewildering mediums saw her sidelong fading phantom, as in the gaseous Fata Morgana, only the uppermost masts out of water, while fixed by infatuation or fidelity or fate to their once lofty perches, the pagan harpooneers still maintained their sinking lookouts on the sea. And now concentric circles seized the lone boat itself, and all its crew, and each floating oar, and every lance pole, and spinning, animate and inanimate, all round and round in one vortex, carried the smallest chip of the Pequod out of sight. But as the last whelmings intermixingly poured themselves over the sunken head of the Indian at the mainmast, leaving a few inches of the erect spar yet visible, together with long streaming yards of the flag, which calmly undulated, with ironical coincidings, over the destroying billows they almost touched. At that instant, a red arm and a hammer hovered backwardly uplifted in the open air, in the act of nailing the flag faster and yet faster to the subsiding spar. A skyhawk that tauntingly had followed the main truck downwards from its natural home among the stars, pecking at the flag, and incommoding Tashtigo there. This bird now chanced to intercept its broad fluttering wing between the hammer and the wood, and simultaneously feeling that ethereal thrill, the submerged savage beneath, in his death gasp, kept his hammer frozen there. And so the bird of heaven, with archangelic shrieks, and his imperial beak thrust upwards, and his whole captive form folded in the flag of Ahab, went down with his ship, which, like Satan, would not sink to hell till she had dragged a living part of heaven along with her, and helmeted herself with it. Now small fowls flew screaming over the yet yawning gulf. A sullen white surf beat against its steep sides, then all collapsed, and the great shroud of the sea rolled on as it rolled 5,000 years ago. Epilogue. And I only am escaped alone to tell the job. The drama's done. Why then here does any one step forth, because one did survive the wreck? It so chanced that after the Parsee's disappearance, I was he whom the fates ordained to take the place of Ahab's boatsman, when that boatsman assumed the vacant post. The same who, when on the last day the 3 men were tossed from out of the rocking boat, was dropped astern. So floating on the margin of the ensuing scene, and in full sight of it, when the half-spent suction of the sunk ship reached me, I was then, but slowly, drawn towards the closing vortex. When I reached it, it had subsided to a creamy pool. Round and round then, and ever contracting towards the button-like black bubble at the axis of that slowly wheeling circle, like another Ixion, I did revolve. Till gaining that vital center, the black bubble upward burst, and now, liberated by reason of its cunning spring, and owing to its great buoyancy, rising with great force, the coffin lifebuoy shot lengthwise from the sea, fell over, and floated by my side. Buoyed up by that coffin, for almost one whole day and night, I floated on a soft and dirge-like main. The unharming sharks, they glided by as if with padlocks on their mouths. The savage sea hawks sailed with sheathed beaks. On the second day, a sail drew nearer, and picked me up at last. It was the devious cruising Rachel, that in her retracing search after her missing children, only found another orphan.